Hey guys, welcome to the Simply Soccer podcast. I think we're on to number 20, which is pretty cool. So a few announcements real quick, as we tend to do. First, I'm going to stop doing podcasts once a week. And this is not because I don't like doing them or that you guys don't like them. I just have a ton of video ideas, and I really want to start making them and releasing more and more videos. As you can tell, this week I actually released already, I think, 4 videos. The only day I didn't release one was on Thursday so far. I plan on releasing one Saturday as well, possibly even Sunday. So I want to use Fridays to hear me out on this one. I'm going to be trying to make longer videos on Fridays. So although they won't be podcasts, I'm going to be trying to make in-depth videos. Like, for example, the first one I want to make is, I have it right here, is something, I'm going to call it something like how to become an impact player or standout player. And it's going to literally be like a 20 to 30 minute class on the things you need to work on, strategies, tactics, and ways that you can become a standout player. So it's going to be more visual. I might have more written text on it. There's going to be a little more structure to it, because in these podcasts, usually, like, I have a few questions in front of me and it's more off the cuff. But I want to start making longer type videos for you guys, especially. It's really targeted towards you guys who listen to the podcasts, simply because you guys are the ones who are willing to listen to a 30+ minute podcast on, learning how to become a better player, and you seem pretty committed. So what this is going to be is almost like a class in where I'll be asking you questions so that you can, I think one of the best ways to make sure you're learning is to be asking the right questions. So I'm going to be trying to ask you the right questions, which will allow you to answer them in a way which will reveal to you what you need to improve on, what you need to be working on, and things of that nature. So, doesn't mean I'm not going to ever be making podcasts again. I will still be making podcasts, but they may be a little more infrequent because I'm going to be making these longer videos. And I have a feeling that these longer videos of 20 to 30 minutes with more planned out features, with, more questions, with more kind of like it being like a more learning experience and more structured, I feel like they're going to take a little bit more time, which if I'm making podcasts as well, it's just kind of burn me out. So I'm going to try doing that. We're going to see how that goes. And if it goes well, we'll stick with it. And once I'm used to doing it, I may just bring the podcast back to once a week. But for now, I don't know if I'm going to have a podcast next week. I may have that video in place. But just to reiterate, doesn't mean I'm not going to be doing podcasts. I will be doing podcasts. I know you guys enjoy these. So I don't want to stop doing that for you. But just to give you a heads up on a new direction I'm going to go with the channel, just because a lot of you enjoyed having the questions for the podcast, so I figured a more in-depth version of that would be pretty desirable. Okay, second, I know I teased the shirts in the last podcast, and if you watched my latest match highlight video or analysis video in my last match, you'll notice I'm wearing the prototype shirt. I'm going to be, in the next week or two, I'm going to make a video that's like 10,000 subscriber, here's how you can get the shirt kind of thing. So for those of you who are interested in getting a shirt, within a week or two, I'll have that available. Again, if you can't afford it or you just don't want one, it's absolutely okay. I appreciate you guys even watching my videos and giving me your time to try and teach you. So, but for people who do want a shirt, a few people have asked me about it. I want to make sure that's available as well. And it's kind of a cool little 10,000 subscriber thing that we can do, a little bit different. All right, so let's get into this one. So I don't have any of your specific questions for this one, but I want to talk about a few things that I've been thinking about recently. And something I kind of, in my last match realized. And so the first thing we're going to go over is how to be direct as an attacking player, or even sometimes like wingbacks, and why you should want to do this. Now, when I'm watching matches, not just professional matches, but just like if I'm at a game, like there's a youth match playing near a field I'm practicing at, or I'm going to if I go to one of my brother's games, which I actually need to start getting out to those, or if I happen to watch my high school play or go to a college match, one of the things that always frustrates me about the players who are supposed to attack is how indirect they are. Now, I'm not saying you need to be direct all the time, but it's one of the most frustrating things, because being direct in the right moments, in the right situations. You learn which are the right situations, which are not. And I might even go over that in that long video I've been talking about, the impact player one. Being direct is incredibly dangerous. Defenders hate it. You run at a defender, there's no worse position for a defender, because if you're standing still and kind of contemplating, or if they've got you trapped in a corner where you have no momentum, you're not running, it's very, very little risk to them. I mean, you might have the quick feet to be able to get out of that and still cause them a problem. But if you're running at them with speed, they have to time their tackle perfectly or hope that you make a mistake, or else you're going to go past them. You're going to set up a teammate. You're going to draw the foul from them. So it's very, very dangerous. And actually, if you look, and you guys can, I don't know if you haven't seen it yet, but my last analysis video, which is just called match analysis or something, I think it's like SimplySoccer match analysis hat-trick, because I scored a hat-trick in it. On my third goal, you'll notice I do this. I get the ball, and my first thought right away as I look behind me and I go, I'm going to attack them. I'm going to go right at them. I have two defenders, and I just run right at them. And you can see that they back off, they back off, they back off, until I do a little move. I create space. I fake the shot, which creates even more space, and then I put it right into the corner. And it all happens in a matter of seconds. See, if I was to delay on the ball, and I wasn't to be direct in that situation, which called for me to be direct, it was a situation where being direct was going to pay off. There was no risk of them countering. And if I had waited and not being direct, the rest of their team would have caught up to me, and the chance would not have been there. But because I was direct, I made the defense not only get nervous and back up, but I scored a goal for my team. And you can see plenty of players who, one of my favorite examples of this actually, of a direct player who recently has come out as like the superstar, is Riyad Mahrez. One thing I love about Mahrez is he's a very risk-taking, and when I say risk-taking, I don't mean he really takes that many risks, but he does things that other players don't. Like he's unpredictable. And he's very, very direct. Like he will just get the ball and run right at you. Now, not every time, but many times. Like he'll just run right at you. He'll take people on. He'll go towards the goal. He won't just get the ball and try and just automatically pass it off. And I say this all the time, because a lot of coaches, when I was playing as a young player, and even at higher levels, say, you know, always look for that pass. Always, you know, like don't hold on to the ball for too long. And sometimes that's good, but it's very limiting. You know, you need balance. You should not be dribbling every single time, but you should not be passing every single time as well. When there's an opening for you to exploit, sometimes you need to take that risk and not pass the ball and take that man on or go for a goal. And trust me, that's a much more nervous situation for a defender, because if you just pass it off, he's done his job. If he pressures you to the point where he is making you pass the ball off, he's done his job. Now, don't take this the wrong way and think that passing it off is a bad thing. No, the majority of the time you will need to pass. But being direct not only creates space, it creates chances if you do it correctly. So when you know, and the thing is also, the best players are usually the players who are direct. If you look at players who run at players, who when they have an opening take it, exploit chances, and they make good decisions. Now I'm going to talk about decision making a little bit in a second, because being direct takes a lot of good decision making, and decision making is also about balance. If you're someone if you notice players who are good at making decisions, you'll probably notice they have a certain level of balance. They know when to do something. They don't get too excitable. And the reason is because they're very composed. A great example of this, and I'm only using this example because I've seen him play pretty much every week, is if you follow the Premier League, Liverpool signed a player on a free called Matip. He's a center back, and he has been one of our signings of the season. I think he's like 24, 25, a young, you know, not like young, but like kind of mid-20s, very good player. And the thing that I love about him, I love about Matip, is he is very balanced. He's very composed on the ball, and he doesn't always do the same thing. Like he'll do what he's required of him. Like he will pass the ball when he needs to, but he'll also take the ball out of the back, and he's very calculated with it. He doesn't do it every single time, because you find players who get really risky with it. And I think one like John Stones right now for Manchester City is kind of juggling this at the moment, because I think one of the things that the biggest criticism of him is he does it too often. Now, eventually, I think John Stones will come good and he'll find the balance. You know, you have to take, there's a bit of risk in the beginning with a player like him because he's going to make a few mistakes that lead to goals. But once he gets it right, he's going to be one of the best center backs in the world if he's nurtured in the right way. But Matip at the moment is that player so far for Liverpool. I know he's only played like a few games, but every game he's just seemed composed. I mean, there's been like one or two against Swansea. He didn't see, you know, he had I think a half, which wasn't great, but he seemed composed. He makes great decisions. And he has that balance, right? And he's a defender, so I just wanted to use a defender example to so you know that balance isn't something that just an attacker needs. You know, a defender also can be unpredictable. A defender is just in a different way. With an attacker, unpredictability comes with the ability to take people one-on-one, to be able to score goals, to be able to make runs in dangerous runs in behind, to be able to combine. With a defender, it's a little bit different. You know, knowing when, you know, because a defender has to keep in mind, sometimes you need to just get the ball out of here, right? Sometimes you need to play that safe option. But the really best defenders in the world, and if you watch them, they'll make risks. They'll take risks sometimes. They're just usually a little less risky. But what always frustrates me, whenever we had defenders, is when we would have a defender that oversimplified things to the point where they would just boot the ball out no matter what, even when there was no pressure on them. And that comes from a lack of balance. It comes from a lack of composure and decision making. And with Matip, he's not like that. You know, he'll boot the ball out when he needs to because, yeah, again, safety first. But if he has space, he knows it. He's a very smart player. He makes great decisions. I think I was listening to Red Men TV recently, and they were talking about, is Matip our best signing so far, which is saying a lot because we also signed Mane, who's been just a revelation. Like, he's been amazing. But the argument was, has Matip actually been our best transfer? And one of the reasons they gave is he never seems to slide tackle. He never seems to go to ground. And the reason this is a good thing is because the players that never have to go to ground or rarely have to slide are the players who read the game very well. You'll also notice players like Matt Hummels does this a lot. Sergio Ramos doesn't slide as much these days because they don't need too many last-ditch tackles because they don't make too many mistakes on their positioning and things of that nature. It's just a good decision maker. Reads the game so well to the point where he's not being caught out. Where our other center back, Lovren, you'll see him flying the tackles all the time. There's not as much composure, but I kind of like that balance. You have the one composed, kind of like cultured, versatile center back, and then you have kind of like the bruiser. You have Lovren, who's going to go around tackling. He's not as composed. He is composed. He's not like he can use his feet. He's actually a great passer of the ball too, but he's a little more wild. That's another example of having good balance in that sense. But going back to so that's just one example, but going back to being direct as an attacker, because that was the main topic, wasn't it? Just start looking for opportunities to be more direct. Now, this is going to take a little bit for you to master. Obviously, if you haven't been doing this and you've just been used to getting the ball and passing it off or getting the ball and being stopped, this is something that's going to take a bit of practice. But just work on it. Like, if you have a ton of, like, here's a perfect example of when I hate it so much when I see a player not being direct in this situation. And it usually has to do either with a winger getting the ball on the wing or a midfielder kind of making the run out there and getting the ball, or an attacker. So the winger gets the ball in the wing with a ton of space, let's say, and the defender's like in their own 18-yard box. There is not a more perfect time to run at that defender. Run right at that defender and try and beat him, because unless like you have a teammate wide open in the box that has a chance to score, you need to be taking that guy on. There's like almost no risk. He might win the ball, sure, but the risk to reward ratio is so in your favor, because if you run right at them, you're not gonna, if he's isolated, you know, one of a few things is going to happen. One, he might win the ball. It's just a possibility. You take the risk of that while doing this. But two, you get past him, set up a goal scoring opportunity. 3, you get past him and he fouls you, and you now have a penalty or a chance outside the box, close to the box. Or you combine with a teammate or something like that. But in those, sometimes I'll see a player get the ball on the wing like that and just stop, and they won't run at them. I don't care if you're the least skillful player, just run and try and beat him. Now, of course, nothing's black and white. There'll be situations where it's not called for that, but that's just an example of when players are not direct, and it just frustrates me because you could gain so much by being direct there. You could literally create a goal or score a goal yourself in that situation. Like for my example, if I find a defender isolated near their own box, I'm taking them on unless I have a better option, and it's an obvious one, like my teammates making a great run into the box and I can slip them through with a simple ball for a goal. I'm taking that person on unless something like that's going on, because all I have to do is beat that one man and I'm in, or I get fouled or something of that nature. I'm just being direct. I'm going right at the goal. And and again, like I said, defenders get nervous when you do that. Most defenders do. When you go right at them, you run right at them. Because now it's not like if you lose the ball, your teammates might jump on your back a little bit. But if they don't get the ball, it's a huge mistake by them. It's a huge, like, they're almost directly responsible. And that's going to be playing on their mind. You know, that's going to be playing into their like, it's going to be feeding their nervousness. Now, some of the more composed defenders are better at dealing with things like that. Like if you came up against a player of a company, or like a Hummels, like I mentioned, it's a little bit different. But you still want to take them on. All right, so that's an example of being direct. And just if you're an attacking player, look for situations where you can be more direct. Now, again, this is not to be every situation. There are going to be situations where you shouldn't be direct. Again, it's balance. It's decision making. There are just going to be times when you just shouldn't do it. And that's fine. There's no shame in just having to pass the ball off. And again, like, I get it as an attacking player myself. I hate it when I can't beat someone one-on-one and I have to pass it off. It's almost like, I lost this battle. But if you want to be a smart player who makes good decisions, you have to let pride kind of filter out. You have to remove your pride from the situation and realize, okay, I'm not going to beat this guy right now. I need to retain possession here. But just get into the mindset of thinking, when should I be direct? When shouldn't I be? And again, a great way to learn this is start watching the best. Start watching better matches. Start watching the top teams play. And notice what the most skillful direct players do. If you're watching Arsenal, a great example, actually, there's a lot of direct players in there. You watch a Sanchez or a Walcott or Oxlade-Chamberlain. These are very direct players. Watch when they're direct and when they're not. If you're a Liverpool fan, take a look at players like Coutinho. Like, Coutinho will sometimes just take a player on, cut inside, and whip one into the far post. He did it the other week, I think, against Hull. That's as direct as it gets. Gets the ball, cuts inside, puts it away. It's incredibly direct. And again, he picks his moment. It was a good moment to do it. If you take a look at like Chelsea, look at Eden Hazard, very direct player when he needs to be. You watch Real Madrid, take a look. I mean, Ronaldo, for God's sake, or Bale. Bale's usually incredibly direct. But you'll also notice he'll pass in certain moments, and in other moments he'll just run down the wing and cross it in, and they'll score. If you watch Barcelona, look at players like, I mean, that's obvious. Neymar's very direct. Suarez can be very direct. Messi can be very direct. Although Messi can be subtly direct. It's hard to sometimes see how he's doing it because he loves to combine and pass his way in. But sometimes he'll be like, screw it, and beat 3 players and score. There's nothing more direct than that. Bayern Munich, Robin is incredibly direct, although he's kind of fading out a little now. But Douglas Costa is very direct. You know, start watching these players and take note, and I think, did we discuss this in the last podcast I discussed how to analyze soccer matches. Take note of these direct players, and when they're deciding to be direct, did them being direct pay off? That's a big one, because if you just look at when they're being direct and be like, oh, okay, he's being direct this many times, notice if it's successful or not. Notice if they made the right decision, even if it didn't come off. Start picking up on things like that, because then when you find yourself in those exact situations in matches, which you will, you'll be like, maybe I should try and be direct here. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm kind of triple teamed right now. Maybe I shouldn't be direct, right? But start looking for those examples when you're watching these matches. When are they being direct? When are they not being direct? This is how I started learning. I did it from a young age. I remember when I was 7, I was watching a match, and I remember watching a player do a move and scoring. In my next match, I did the exact same thing and ended up scoring. You'll learn a lot, even as a young player, especially as a young player, from watching these best of the best players and actually analyzing it, picking it up. Don't watch, in a passive way. Don't watch on an emotional way, which I sometimes get with Liverpool matches. So sometimes I have to be like, okay, try and not get too emotional, because then you'll kind of ruin your analysis. For Liverpool games, I give it a bye, I give it a pass. But I'll watch other matches, like maybe a Chelsea match or an Arsenal match or Real Madrid or some Champions League matches, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to start, now it's just from a pure football sense, I'm going to enjoy this match, but I'm going to observe what the players are doing and why they're doing it. When did they do something good? When did the commentators go, oh, that was really good? Like sometimes the commentators will tell you, they'll be like, wow, that was a really good decision or really good touch. Oh, what a move. Like they'll do things like that. Pick up on that too. When are the commentators who, by the way, these commentators have seen hundreds of matches and spoken on hundreds of matches, maybe more. So when they're impressed, something good is happening, okay? So let's move on because we only have 10 minutes. So the next one is how to make good decisions. We alluded to this earlier. How to make good decisions. Now this is again a tricky one, but again, let's kind of structure this a little. First off, again, be analyzing matches. Watch what the best do. Notice what they're doing. Notice what they're doing the majority of the time, and notice when they do the things that are going to make up the minority of what they're doing, but notice when they do it. What is the timing? What is the thinking behind it? And I talked about this in how to analyze soccer tactics through matches. Notice when certain things are happening, because there's going to be situations where taking a man on and doing a step over makes sense. But there's going to be other situations where it doesn't. Take note of these things. This is going to help you with your decision making. Notice when they make not only good decisions, but bad decisions, and try and figure out why that was a good decision, why it was a bad decision. What was the better decision? That's even better. Think, what was the decision they should have made? And the more you can identify what the best decision in a certain situation is, the more you can actually try and implement that and act upon that when you find yourself in a match. Very important. And in fact, I'm actually going to start a series on the channel, a little tactic series where I'm going to give you certain situations, and I'm going to ask you to answer which do you think is the best option, then I'll give you the answer, right? So I think that's another good way. So look out for that in the channel. That's another series I'm kind of working on at the moment. So that's one good way to think about good decision making. Here's the thing though. Most of us when it comes to decision making, we think retain the ball is always the best option. It's not. We talked about this earlier. You have to take risks. Someone's got to be the risk taker on the team. That's how the Ronaldos and the Messis and the Neymars and the Bales of the world and the Suarezes and the whoever else, the Hazards of the world are created, because they're risk takers. They take risks. Sometimes they don't pay off. But you look at Messi, he's gotten so good at risk taking that some of the things he does that would be risky for another player to do isn't risky for him, because he's done it so often that he can pull it off. It doesn't matter how many times, like every time. Like him taking on two players and getting trapped in the corner with two players isn't even risky for him anymore, because he knows how to make sure he doesn't lose the ball in that situation. So one thing you need to make sure you're doing is take more risks. Good decision making isn't just predicated on playing safe. It's not. Playing safe sometimes is the bad decision. Some situations don't call for you to play safe. Some situations call for you to, like we said, be direct. Some situations call for you to pass. Some situations call for you to take the risk. Some situations call for you to beat someone one-on-one, or at least try to. And again, retaining possession and retaining the ball is good, but it doesn't matter if you're not scoring. I mean, how many times have you watched a match here's a good one. If anyone watched Manchester United under Van Gaal, any of you Manchester United fans out there, how frustrating, and I've watched a few of their matches when Van Gaal was manager, how frustrating were those 0-0 games where your team would have a ton of the possession, but they would just be passing it sideways and no one was taking a risk. No one was taking risks. Like, it was just back-to-back passing, or you were retaining, you had the possession, but nothing was happening. The other team was like, all right, cool, just let them pass it along their back line in midfield, and if they try and break us down, we'll just get them. Like, it was frustrating for me to watch, and I don't like Manchester United. Like, they're our rival team, but I was like, this is how the mighty have fallen. And they're kind of getting back there. Mourinho's doing a better job. He's much more tactically astute, in my opinion. But how frustrating is that? Because I think Van Gaal was telling them, look, I want us, this is the right way to play. We're going to play possession-based football, and then we're going to break them down. Don't even think about taking someone on, just pass your way in. And, it just didn't work, and it ended up costing him his job. It wasn't terrible. It sometimes worked, but, what I'm trying to make is sometimes you have to take risks. And the thing is, the risk you take, if you pull it off, when the risk to reward ratio is more in favor of the reward, go for it. Like if you take someone on the wing and the reward is you get into the box, that's worth the risk of him maybe tackling it away and losing the ball. And maybe he'll tackle it away and go in for a throw-in, so you'll still have the ball. Or maybe you take someone on the byline, and there's more chance of, one, you either beating him, or two, him putting it out for a corner. You should definitely be taking him on at that point, because it's unlikely that he'll actually cleanly take the ball from you. I think you can see where I'm going at. So you need to be able to analyze these situations and immediately say, which is the good decision, which is the not. And that comes with good decision-making, being able to quickly determine, in a fraction of a second, what the good decision is. And you'll get better at this as time goes along. There's no magic thing. This is just something that takes time. I get a lot of people who ask me, a lot of players on the channel, through other things, like how to make good decisions. Well, it's not like I can give you this magical thing. It's a big topic. It's broad. But again, watching the best play and picking up on their decisions. And why they made certain decisions, that's important. You have to ask the why. Why did they do that? Why did they do this? Why didn't they do that? That's the important part, because then you can get kind of tune in to their level of thinking. Okay. Next, with decision making, you're going to have to, and this comes with taking risks, you need to be unpredictable. And I used Mahrez as an example because, again, every single good professional player will most times actually, just pass the ball off. Just retain possession. Just play that safe option. But the best of the best are the players that take those risks and become good at taking those risks, are unpredictable. I mean, you look at some of the goals Mahrez scored last season. They were incredibly risky, unpredictable goals. I remember when he just turned, what was it, Azpilicueta? I can't pronounce his name. But the Chelsea fullback, inside out, like 3 times before putting it in the corner. You know, most players wouldn't even take that risk. They would have just beat him once and then crossed it blindly into the box, and it probably would have been cleared away. But Mahrez is like, no. I've got this guy on the ropes. The best thing for me to do now is to try and score, because it was so crowded in the box. You know, he could try and whip it across, but it would probably be headed away. It was a good calculated move. Turns him inside out a few times and then puts it in the corner. It's a risk, because if Azpilicueta, again, sorry for butchering his name, if he had stolen the ball, his Leicester teammates would be like, come on, man, cross it, right? Even though Mahrez probably knew, well, crossing it's not going to do much right now. It's too congested in the middle. There's more Chelsea players in there than Leicester players. You know, it's not going to help me right now. However, this risk I'm taking here, beating him more than once, getting it onto my left foot and trying to shoot, might pay off. And it did. He scored. And I think they beat Chelsea that day. He did the same thing against Man City. He was very direct. If anyone remembers that goal where he ran right at them, hit the ball over someone, did a step over on, I forget, maybe Company, and then blasted the ball in with his right foot. Again, you're combining a good decision with directness and being unpredictable. And he was taking a risk. It's everything we're talking about here. Now, again, a lot goes on behind the scenes with someone like Mahrez to allow him to do things like this. A lot of the mental game comes in. A lot of the tactical comes in. Good decisions is very sometimes tactical. It's very strategic. You know, again, you need to time and when you're going to make certain decisions. You know, because again, like I was using Matip's example, maybe he only takes the ball forward 3 times a game, maybe if that. But it's planned out when he does it. He picks his moment, right? And sometimes that moment will lead to a goal. Like when we played Man United, he picked a moment where he just strided upfield, beat a few players with his momentum, nutmegged Fellaini to Chan, and Chan did some quick foot thing in the box and almost scored. That was when the risk almost paid off amazingly, right? And he picked his moment, and it was a good moment. He made the right decision. All right, guys. So I think I've actually done podcasts in the past about decision-making being direct. I just wanted to kind of reiterate a few points here, because it's a very important thing. I don't want you guys becoming players who are rigid. I don't want you guys becoming one-dimensional players. Like, that is the last thing I want to happen, because there's so many of them. There are so many one-dimensional players out there, guys, who can only do a few things, who are, you know, quote-unquote solid players, like who are well-rounded, but they don't take those risks. They don't do the things necessary to become a standout player, to become that player who when people watch him go, whoa, we've got something here, or to become that player who takes the headlines. And look, there's always risk. And I'm not saying you should be a show-offy player. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want to be an impact player, a player who stabs and marks their authority on a match, who when walking away from the match can be like, I had an influence in that match, you have to be a risk taker. You have to be direct in some manner usually. You have to be someone who's unpredictable. It's just, you can't be that player who just does 1 and 2 touches every single time and be an impact player. You probably can. I mean, I'm kind of assuming a lot there, but trust me, you need to be a player who isn't doing the same thing over and over and over again. You know, there are plenty of players I've played with, and here's the funny thing. I think this is more of a mental thing, because I've played with players who are so talented, who are really good, like their first touch is amazing, their passing is amazing, they can beat players one-on-one, but then I play with them and all they do is 1 touch, 2 touch, pass, 1, 2, 2, pass, like whatever. And it's fine, we'd maintain possession, but then when it would come to a situation where they had the option to shoot, and they probably would have scored if they did, they wouldn't. They had the option to take someone one-on-one and whip a ball into the box. They wouldn't. And it hurt their game. You know, it made them less of a threat. And you don't want to do that, right? And it's more of a mental thing, because all it would take is like for it to click and them start doing that. And they would become much more dangerous. And that's the thing. For a lot of you, you probably have the skill and the ability to already do some of these things. It's just that mentality now. You need to have that mentality. Have the mentality of, how can I be dangerous in this situation? Like when you're in practice and matches, how can I be dangerous? How can I make the defenders sweat? How can I do something that's going to have an impact right now? And again, good decision making, you can't do it every single time. Like if the answer is I can't right now, I'm being double teamed, I need to retain possession here or play it out off them for a throw in, you need to do that. But you know, you need to be looking at more opportunities for how to have an impact. That's the thing. You become a dangerous player. And the great thing about it is when the other team notices you're a dangerous player and starts this happened to me in my last game. I got man-marked after scoring a couple of goals. And the thing about that is it opens up space for your other teammates as well. Like there's so many win-win-wins with this. Okay, so I just want to make that, again, I want to reiterate, this doesn't mean you need to be taking risks every single time. I'm just saying start looking for them. Start realizing the chances you have to take a risk. Start recognizing the situations in which you should be being a little more risky, where you should be being more direct, where you should be, you know, just taking a chance, right? And you'll notice there's a lot more opportunities for this in matches than you realized. And again, retaining possession is great. You don't want to be counterattacked. Got to make sure you're making good decisions. But you need someone on your team who's going to take risks. If you are a team of just one-dimensional players, you're not going to win many matches, in my eyes. I don't think you will, because you need that special player. You need that goal scorer. You need that impact player, and every good team has it. And I'll even tell you, like Chelsea, you have Costa, you have Hazard, you have Willian, you have Oscar. You have so many players in that team who can be direct and make that impact. You even have, like, and this does not just apply to attacking players. You have Conte, who does it in a different way. Now, again, like I'm saying with this risk-taking, some players, yeah, if you're a center defensive mid, maybe this doesn't apply to you. You're not going to be taking as many risks, but you'll still see situations where you need to. Like, I don't want to say that every player who doesn't take risks isn't essential to the team, because a lot of center defensive midfielders do a lot of the dirty work that goes unnoticed. And this happened at Liverpool for years with Lucas, who was a very underrated player when he was in his prime. So yes, in some positions that's the case, but if you're an attacking player, you gotta be, right? You gotta be that risk taker at times. You look at players on Manchester United, you're gonna have your Pogbas, you're gonna have your Rashfords. I mean, Rashford is a huge, you notice why Rashford's such an exciting player? He's so direct. He'll get the ball and run at you. And he's got pace, and players hate that. The last thing a defender wants is a pacey player running at them. You look at, who else? Arsenal. I already said you got Walcott, you got Sanchez, you got Oxlade-Chamberlain, you got Ramsey when he's fit. You have so much threat in there, so much directness. They might play intricate passing, but do you really want Theo Walcott running right at you, or Alexis Sanchez running at you? No. You look at Real Madrid, you've got your Ronaldos, your Bales, your Benzemas. You look at Barcelona, I mean, Neymar, Suarez, Messi, the top three. You look at, I mean, any of the good teams, and they have these impact players who will be direct, who will take the risks, who will shoulder the responsibility of potentially messing up. Because you have to be a little brave with it, because sometimes you'll be criticized if you mess up. But you have to take that. You have to take that on. You just have to. You have to take that risk. And if you look at teams that don't have these players, they're usually the teams struggling. Like if you look in the Premier League, who is, for example, Swansea's impact player? Who is their direct player? They don't have many. I would say who's the player on there? Sigurdsson might be one of their few, but you know, I don't have a player on their team that I can think of who pops out in my head and goes, that's the match winner, right? And what's happened? They're near the bottom. What other teams? I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. But you can see my point here. You need those players. You need the risk takers. You need the ones who are willing to take the responsibility and take the risks. And that's why, like, goal scorers are paid the most money in the world. That's why they're usually the best. I mean, when's the last time a defender won the Ballon d'Or? It was Cannavaro back in like 2006 or something. Even then it was a bit of a strange one, but that was the last time I think the last time a defensive player won it. And I can't even remember before that if a defensive player won it, because the attackers who were scoring goals, creating chances, they're the risk takers, they're the fun players to watch, they're the ones scoring the goals and winning the games. And you need those players. All right, so that's enough from me. So just remember, keep in mind, I forgot to ask you guys questions, I just realized that, but don't worry about it. I'll have, when I'm doing those longer videos, we'll get way into that. But so remember, 1, be direct as an attacker. 2, have good decision making, and that comes from knowing when to be direct, when not to be direct, and other nuanced things in between. Decision making, you need to be taking risks. Sometimes you shouldn't, sometimes you should. Take some risks. It means taking players one-on-one. That means shooting. That means being direct, like we said. And be unpredictable. And this all, being unpredictable ties into everything we're talking about here. Be unpredictable. Be a player that's not easily read. Don't do the same thing every single time. You know, don't be someone who just gets the ball and passes it off every single time. You're easy to mark. Be a little risky. Be a little adventurous. Okay. So that's been this podcast. Okay, guys. So remember, next week we might not have one. We're not discontinuing the podcast. We're just we're probably just not going to do them once a week all the time. But don't worry. I'm hoping you guys will really like the videos I put in place of these podcasts. Okay. So I don't have any questions for you guys simply because I forgot to ask them as I was doing the thing. So my bad on that. So much for this being structured. However, leave me any questions you want answered in the comments. Remember, although I might not be doing it once a week, I will still be doing it, so I will still try and answer your questions. So put them down there below. Hashtag for this week will just be direct. So hashtag direct allows me to know, or indicates to me, that you have listened all the way to the end of this podcast. I like to be able to identify the players who have listened all the way through, the players who are committed to improving, who are willing to listen to a podcast of this length, and, you know, spend time on it and studying. So I always love to know who's doing that and who's not. So put hashtag direct in there. And if you put that hashtag in there, it also makes it more likely I'll answer your question. Doesn't mean I will, but I definitely pay attention to that, right? I definitely want to be answering the questions of the players, so long as I like the question, of the players who are listening all the way through, who are giving me their attention, who are committed to improving their game. All right, guys. Also, make sure to like and share this video. That definitely helps. If you're new to Simply Soccer, which, I mean, if any of you who have made it this far are, please consider subscribing. You're a real trooper for listening. What are we at? 38 minutes? Holy crap. That's longer than usual. 38 minutes of a podcast from someone you are not subscribed to. So thank you for that. Please consider subscribing. All right, guys. So remember, I'm going to be having a few different series on here in the future, working hard to bring you more content. At the moment, I do at least 4 videos a week. I'm trying to do even more. It's hard sometimes, you know, it's hard, and I have to be really, really structured and really disciplined to do it, but I'm going to be trying to do it. All right, guys, so thank you for listening. I appreciate you all tuning in and listening to this, and just for your general support and everything. You know, look out for future videos. I'm going to be trying to do a pretty wide array of topics. And I'll see you on the next video or perhaps the next podcast. Take care, guys.